Yo, what's up guys, Alf here, and today I'm going to be doing a new video in the Under the Meta series where I have a look at a deck that I think is strong and has a lot of potential, but isn't quite top tier for whatever reason. I'm going to be breaking down all the card choices, explaining the weaknesses and how they could potentially be addressed going forwards, and then I got some gameplay at the end so you guys can see the deck in action. And also, if you want to try the list out for yourself, there'll be an importable deck list down in the description. But anyway, with that all out the way, this is my Mardu Titan Scam deck in Historic. So the idea behind this deck is we have 8 creatures that shut off ETBs in Doorkeeper, Thrall and Hushbringer. And if we have one of these in play and we cast either Croxer or Flage, we don't get the ETB, we don't get the Helix or the Hand Disruption mode, but we do get to keep the Titan in play immediately, which is a really big tempo swing on turn 3. And in addition to that, we also have 4 copies of Arena of Glory, meaning that if we have a Doorkeeper, Thrall or Hushbringer in play, we can then haste the Flage or Croxer into play, getting an attack trigger, getting in for 6 damage immediately, and also getting either a Helix or a Hand Disruption mode of Croxer, which applies a ton of pressure really quickly. Now this idea isn't exactly anything new. This kind of idea has been tried multiple times ever since we got Flage and Arena of Glory, but I felt like it was worth returning to right now for a few reasons. So first of all, I feel like ETB hate in general is just really good in the format right now. Right, we've got Food Chain emerging as one of the new top decks where ETB hate shuts off the combo and the backup plan, whether you're running humans or goblins. It's good against the Goyf decks because it shuts off Pyrogoyf, which is their main way of closing the game out, and then also Fear of Missing Out if you're on Juns, and then if you're on Mardu, it shuts off stuff like Juggernaut Peddler and Overlord of the Balemerc as well. It's really good against Affinity, really good against Devotion, really good against Yawgmoth, so there's a variety of top decks right now. Even stuff like Dimir, it still shuts off stuff like Snapcaster Mage, which still sees play, so I feel like ETB hate is at its best it's been in a really long time, and when your proactive game plan is running 8 ETB hate cards, that seems very relevant in the current meta game. And then on top of that, I also just feel like the Titans in Flage and Croxer are pretty well positioned against the interactive decks as well. Even without scamming them in, just having them as a recursive graveyards threat, especially when you have access to Arena of Glory, feels very good against decks like Dimir and Jund as well. And then additionally, the proactive game plan of the deck has also improved quite a lot with the addition of Pyrogoyf as well, right? Now we have another good use for Arena of Glory, which is great at helping to find the ETB hate cards more consistently, find your Titans more consistently, and also just fill the graveyard so that you can escape the Titans early on as well. So it feels like we now have, kind of an extra payoff for the proactive game plan of the deck as well. And also, I just think Pyrogoyf is one of the best cards in the format at the moment as well. So, going to be having a look at the specifics of the deck now. Starting off at the 1-drop slot, we've obviously got 4 copies of Fatal Push, which is just the best spot removal in the format right now. Don't really need to explain that one too much. It's very important to have some spot removal, even though we do have Flage and Pyrogoyf, which help there as well. And then we've got 8 discard spells and Thoughtseizing and Inquisition, which, especially with the rise of combo decks recently with Food Chain, there's, Devotion still seeing a reasonable amount of play. Affinity, seeing a decent amount of play right now, and being able to get rid of their top end like Kappa Cannoneer and Krang is very important. So I feel like having 8 discard spells is reasonably well positioned at the moment. And again, we really want to have early interaction to slow the opponent down, and then we can kind of go off with our, scam plan after that. Then Doorkeeper, Thrall and Hushbringer, like I said, ETB hate very good right now. Doorkeeper, Thrall is, the flash is pretty nice at playing around counter spells, and then the ability to shut off artifacts is very relevant against decks like Affinity right now. And then Hushbringer, the lifelink is kind of a plus as well, and the shutting off of death triggers is relevant against decks like Yawgmoth, Hardened Scales, and I've also seen some people doing well with Arcbound Ravager and more of a Rakdos shell with artifacts, where Hushbringer is also very good there as well. So Doorkeeper, Thrall and Hushbringer are pretty good. I do want to quickly talk about why I'm running these over Torpor Orb, which obviously the downside of Doorkeeper, Thrall and Hushbringer is they're much more easy to interact with. Most decks are going to commonly have creature removal as opposed to artifact removal, and the main reason is just that, first of all, they're better in multiples because they're just an extra creature on the board, right? If you drew Torpor Orb in multiples, that's kind of awkward. And additionally, if we do run Torpor Orb over Hushbringer, for example, we then have way too few creatures for Pyrogoyf to consistently hit as well. I feel like it's important to have 8 ETB hate creatures so that Pyrogoyf does consistently hit, especially in the early game, because you do pretty commonly want to go Arena of Glory Pyrogoyf on turn 3, and not hitting anything is kind of a disaster. So I feel like to keep the creature count high, it's worth running Doorkeeper, Thrall and Hushbringer. Then Croxer and Flage, don't really need to explain these too much. I feel like you don't really want to run the full 8 copies because one of the weaknesses of the deck is that drawing these in multiples is pretty awkward, right? We're not running any ways to loot these away outside of Fable of the Mirror Breaker, and I do feel like Flage is just the more generically powerful out of the 2. So 7 has felt like a good amount for the Titans to me. Then, like I said, Barrogoyf, works just very well in kind of an interactive mid-range deck anyway, because you're going to be filling the graveyard using your early discard spells to get rid of your opponent's cards, which, immediately usually gets a couple card types in the graveyard. Same sort of thing with Fatal Push. The lifelink on this is absolutely huge. The Death Touch on this is absolutely huge. It works very well with Arena of Glory as well. Fills your graveyard for Phlage and Croxer. Helps to find your ETB hate cards more consistently, which is obviously going to be very good in the matchups where the ETB hate is important. And then finally, we've got Fable of the Mirror Breaker, which is just, a generically powerful mid-range threat that doesn't get hit by your ETB hate, helps loot away your Titans if you do have them in multiples, and then, works as a pretty effective late-game threat when paired with Barrogoyf as well. And then in terms of the mana base, 25 lands might seem on the high side, but we don't have any early draw, and it's so important that we find our third land on curve every single game. So I felt like 25 lands is important to ensure that we can consistently cast Barrogoyf, Fable, and Phlage on turn 3, because, like I said, we don't have any early looting, we don't have any early card draws, so you're not guaranteed to find your third land on curve every single time with 24 lands. And also, I felt like it was important here to run the 4 Arena of Glory and also have 14 Mountains to ensure that it comes into play untapped consistently, whilst also still having enough black for your interaction on turn 1 and enough white for Doorkeeper Thrall and Hushbringer on turn 2. And that was pretty difficult to fit everything in with only 24 lands. In terms of the lands themselves, nothing too much to talk about here. Prismatic Vista, very important for a number of reasons, right? It triggers Revolt for Fatal Push, fills the graveyard for Phlage and Croxer, and also gets an extra card type in the graveyard for Barrogoyf pretty consistently. Then, like I said, I felt it was very important to have enough Mountains in the deck to ensure that Arena of Glory is entering untapped. So we've got, Sacred Foundry, Blood Crypt, Prismatic Vista, and 2 Mountains to ensure that we have 14 for Arena of Glory. Then we've also got some, other white-black sources to ensure that we have 14 black sources for our interaction, and like I said, enough white sources for Doorkeeper Thrall and Hushbringer. Silent Clearing is also pretty nice utility here, right? Gives us a way to loot away if we do have too many lands, because like I said, 25 lands is fairly high, so you will flood out in some games, so being able to crack these just to keep the cards flowing is pretty important. Again, gives you another way to trigger Revolt and Fatal Push, gets another card type in the graveyard, fills the graveyard for Phlage and Croxer as well. And then outside that, nothing too much to talk about. I do still feel like in the current metagame, it's very important to ensure that you're running 4 Vista and 4 Basics alongside it, so you don't get hosed by Harbinger and Magus post-sideboard. And then Giganta are a pretty nice series. It's free to run, and it's actually better in this deck than most because we can haste it into play off Arena of Glory, which is, it has come up a few times. Not a massive interaction, but still worth bearing in mind. So that's the main deck. Like I said, I do feel like ETB hate is very good right now, so having 4 Doorkeeper Thrall, 4 Hushbringer in the main deck is going to really, really improve your matchups against decks like Food Chain, Affinity, Devotion. The Goyf's matchup, it helps a lot as well. And then, like I said, I feel like the Titans are pretty well positioned. Barrogoyf is a good card right now as well. So there's a lot of good things going on in the main deck that I think do make it relatively well positioned in the current format. And then moving on to the sideboard, we've got 4 copies of Seam Rip, which is basically for matchups where we want additional spot removal in addition to Fatal Push, and also being able to remove cheap artifacts and enchantments is very important. Rest in Peace, I'm going to talk about in the weaknesses, but that is very good against our deck. I still see cards like, Birthing Ritual, Goblin Bombardment occasionally. Being able to remove those is very important as well, but it's just mainly here to ensure that we have additional spot removal alongside Fatal Push. And typically the decks that we want this against are decks like Boros and Izzet Wizards and stuff like that, where I don't really like Fragment Reality there because you're going to very commonly need to use these to take out the opponent's 2-mana creatures, and against auras, using this to take out a core Spirit Dancer or Light Paws, and then the opponent getting an Esper Sentinel or a Mother of Runes is pretty awkward. Same sort of thing against Wizards, right? Using it to take out Dreadhorde Arcanist and them getting a Symmetry Sage is pretty awkward as well, so that's why I'm running Seam Rip over it. Then 2 copies of Surgical Extraction as Graveyard Hate. I feel like, I really like Unlicensed Hearse at the moment because I feel like Hearse is very good against Jund and the Goyf decks in general, shuts off Jarsil, and exiles the graveyard at a rate where you can reduce the Goyfs as well. But because we're running Barrogoyf ourselves, in this deck, I didn't really feel like Hearse was good because then you're shrinking your own Barrogoyf as well, whereas Surgical, if you're not going to run repeatable Graveyard Hate, I feel like Surgical is the way to go because extracting the graveyard against decks like Izzet Phoenix or Reanimator is very effective. So yeah, Surgical Extraction, my graveyard hate of choice, but, you know, there are other options you could run in this slot as well if you wanted to. Then we've got 2 copies of High Noon, which, again, more combo hate, good against Food Chain, good against Phoenix, good against Auras, good against any deck that relies on casting multiple spells per turn, and doesn't really affect us very much at all, so very good against the combo decks. Then we've got 3 copies of Ripples of Undeath, which is predominantly for the mid-range mirror matches, right? I'm not a massive fan of the discard spells in the mid-range mirror matches, because obviously it's very good if you have it in your opening hand, but mid-range mirror matches often come down to top deck wars, and, you know, if the opponent is running more threats and you're running more discard spells, that's going to be awkward in situations where you're both top decking, so I prefer cutting some of the discard spells and having more gas, and this is really good in the deck because, you know, it ensures that we consistently get ahead on card advantage if we can consistently pay for the 1 life and, sorry, the 1 mana and 3 life, and it also just naturally fills the graveyard for our Flage and Croc, so, you know, having 7 of them, you're going to hit them consistently, they are going to constantly fill the graveyard in order to enable you to escape them over and over again, so yeah, Ripples has felt very, very good in the mid-range mirror matches, and then got 3 copies of Toxic Deluge for any go wide deck. Obviously, this gives us a way to kill Guardian Evangel once the opponent's comboed off if they don't have a way to give it haste, but, you know, just generally good against any deck going wide. Can be good, you know, again, this is another card I like bringing in over discard spells in the mid-range mirror matches, because even if the opponent does get on the board early, using this to take out all the opponent's Goyfs and whatever board presence they've built up is really nice. And then, obviously, against decks like Affinity and Yawgmoth when they are going wide as well, this is just a really good way to reset the board and start putting it ahead again. So that's the deck overall, and now moving on to the weaknesses. I think if you just look at the list, you should be able to see the weaknesses. We've got 8 creatures that are ETB hate, so if the opponent isn't running a deck that gets hurt by ETB hate, these cards basically do nothing unless you have them alongside Flage and Croxa, which then makes sideboarding quite awkward, because if you are against a deck like Blue-White Control, for example, where ETB hate basically does nothing against them, apart from if they're running Snapcaster Mage maybe, then if you cut these, you're running 7 Titans, which I guess, you know, Blue-White Control is probably a bad matchup, because having 7 Titans in that matchup is pretty good, but you get the picture. If you cut your ETB hate cards, you're then stuck with 7 Titans that you have to escape from the graveyard. They're competing for the same resources. We don't really have good ways to loot them away outside of Fable of the Mirror Breaker, so I feel like the big issues with the deck are in matchups where the opponent doesn't get hurt by ETB hate. Additionally, I think the deck is pretty soft to Rest in Peace as well, right? Rest in Peace shuts off Baragoi, Flage, and Croxa, which are, you know, the 3 main win conditions in the deck. Now, obviously, you can still go ETB hit cards and then scam the Titans into play without them ever going into the graveyard, but you need to have exactly Doorkeeper Thrall and Hushbringer. Then you need them to survive. You know, if the opponent has a Rest in Peace in play and you go Doorkeeper Thrall into Flage and the opponent kills the Doorkeeper Thrall in response to the Flage, that's an absolute disaster for you. So Rest in Peace, you know, if you are against a deck like Blue-White Control, for example, Rest in Peace makes things very awkward for you as well, because that's a matchup where you typically want to be cutting your ETB hate cards. So I think the big issue with this deck is that if you're up against a deck that doesn't care about ETB hate, it is pretty awkward, especially if they can run Rest in Peace. But having said that, you know, the reason why, or one of the reasons why I wanted to return to this deck, was because I do feel like ETB hate is at an all-time high right now, so that's basically why I feel the deck is worth running right now. If the metagame changes and a lot of decks that don't get hit by ETB hate start emerging, then the whole deck probably isn't worth playing. So I don't think there's really a good issue to solve those problems, really. I think you really do want to be running 8 ETB hate cards to enable them. You do really want to be running 7 cards to pair alongside that. But again, if ETB hate starts becoming less relevant, this deck probably isn't worth running going forwards. But right now, I do think there are enough decks that do get hit by it that it is, you know, a decently positioned deck at the moment. Anyway, if you've got any questions about the deck or any suggestions of how you could potentially address those issues, definitely let me know in the comments. I'd love to chat to you about that. Next up, I've got some gameplay so you guys can see the deck in action. I hope you enjoyed the video, and I'll catch you all in the next one. Big up! Okay, so we're on the play here, and yeah, I think we can keep this one right. Slightly too many lands, but, you know, we've got Arena of Glory, we've got Croc, so we do need a second black to be able to escape Croc, but we've got Inquisition, we've got Fatal Push. So, you know, as long as we draw something else, on the, you know, another proactive card off the top, I think we should be good. If we draw a Hushbringer or Doorkeeper Thrall, we can potentially hasten the Croxa on turn 3, which would be really sick. And we're against the Lurrus deck as well, so having Inquisition and Fatal Push is big. Okay, so we're against Auras, and I'm going to take Light Pause here, and then we've obviously got Fatal Push for the Core Spirit Dancer, which is really nice. So we should be able to take out both of their threats here. So they plot the Demonic Ruckus on turn 1. We're just going to play the Sacred Family Trapped. Fable is a really nice draw now. That's the kind of card I was looking for. So now the opponent's presumably going to run out the Spirit Dancer here. We can Fatal Push it before they have a chance to use Shard Mage's Rescue or something like that. And then we can run out the Fable next turn, loot away this excess land, get Croxer into the graveyard to start filling it and be able to escape it. Okay, so there's the Ruckus. We're definitely Fatal Push in response here. And now, obviously, the opponent, if they find their third land, they can put Lurrus into hand, but, you know, we can get Fable down here. It should be able to hopefully loot us into another discard spell would be ideal to be able to preemptively take away Lurrus, or, you know, if not, a Flage or another piece of removal to be able to remove it if they do get it into play. Just got to really hope that they don't draw another creature here. You know, if they can just run out another 2-mana creature into an aura, that would be pretty awkward. Oh, no. Okay, there's a light pause. I mean, thankfully, we do get the looting off Fable, and they're putting the Ethereal Armor on now, which means that their shield's down here. So we're going to always loot away 2 cards unless we find another piece of removal, right? We want to take down light pause as quickly as possible. So going to loot away the Croxer and the Concealed Courtyard here. We really want to find a removal spell. And unfortunately, we don't find one. So with the mana we've got, we can obviously attack with the 2/2 token to give us an extra treasure, and then we can go Hushbringer plus either Fable or Flage. Now, I guess the rationale for playing Fable here is it gives us 2 more looks off Chapter 2 at finding a Fatal Push, but considering we've already used 1 Fatal Push and there's only 3 more in the deck, the chances of us doing that are pretty low. So I'm kind of more incentivized here to go for Hushbringer plus Flage just to get more presence on the board. Because, like I said, I feel like the chances of finding, you know, one of our remaining 3 Fatal Push off the looting is pretty low. So I think I'm going to go for that. Maybe that's a little greedy because I feel like we kind of need the opponent to not have a crazy turn next turn for this play to be effective, but same sort of token, right? We'd have to get very lucky off the Fable, plus the opponent would need to have a slightly slower start this turn as well. So I feel like going for Flage has the higher upside here, you know, unless we knew we were going to get Fatal Push off the Fable. Wow, okay, it looks like opponent doesn't have any auras here. That's absolutely massive for us. So, oh, and we drew Thoughtseize. So that's obviously going to preemptively get rid of the Lurrus straight away here. So yeah, we'll lead on Thoughtseize here just to see what they have. Okay, just another light pause. That's great. So, and then I think we can get in with both, right? If we start applying pressure here, it's going to make their next turn a little bit more awkward. Now, it is kind of awkward that they have Sentinel's Eyes, meaning that they can still pretty freely attack here. But we are starting to apply a lot of pressure to their life total, and if they don't find an aura in the next 2, because they obviously have the Sunbaked Canyon they can crack here, then I think we've got a really good chance of winning next turn, because if we loot away whatever we draw for the turn with Fable, we then have 6 cards in the graveyard. If we then draw a Black Source off the top, we can escape Croxer with haste. So as long as we don't die this turn, I think we've got a pretty good chance of being able to set up lethal next turn. Now, obviously, we did get quite lucky that they ran out of auras there, but I feel like in the spot we were in, considering we only have, you know, 4 main deck pieces of removal that can kill Light Pause even when it starts growing, that's a pretty big deal. Okay, so they do find an aura off the top. I would imagine they'd get Griff Spoon if they don't have... I mean, if they're running Kaya's Ghost Form and Melt Strider's Resolve, they'd have probably used that last turn. So I imagine they'll probably get a Griff Spoon here. But yeah, we've got 5 cards in the yard. If we can loot away what we draw and find a Black Source, I think we should be good to win no matter what. Unless, maybe if they find another creature to chump block here, they might be able to survive. But, you know, if they don't, I think we might be good even if we don't find a Black Source off the loot. I guess if they have another Ethereal Armor here, we might be in trouble, but we're still at 17. Right, the lifelink off Hushbringer and the life gain off Flage might actually make a difference here if they do have another aura. But yeah, the fact they're in the tank is a good sign. So they don't have any more auras. Puts us down to 8. Let's see if they have a creature. If they have a Sentinel or a Mother. Okay, it's pretty awkward having to loot away a Black Source because we really want to find a Black Source off the top here. And we don't find one, but I think as long as they're not running anything weird like a Fragment Reality in the main deck, we should be good to win this turn, right? Because we can copy the 2/2, attack with everything, go face with the Flage, puts them down to 4. Presumably they have to block the Flage, and then we just get in for 4 with the token, and, well, we get in for 5 with the other creatures anyway, so as long as they don't have a removal spell here, I think we should be good. I mean, it looks like the opponent has something, but I imagine if they're running a stock list, the only thing it could be is another Shard Mage's Rescue, and there's not a 1-mana aura that can give lifelink. As far as I'm aware, anyway. So I think we should be good here. So yeah, they block the Flage. As long as they don't have a way to kill one of the tokens here, we should be alright. Yeah, there is the Shard Mage's Rescue, but again, I guess this would be the spot where they blow us out with Melt Strider's Resolve if they were running that, but I think that's very awkward to run in straight Boros. Yeah, they've only got Hammer Hands. So we did get a bit fortunate that the opponent ran out of auras there, but I also, even though this is a matchup where the ETB hate cards don't do much, we have a lot of interaction post-sideboard, so... Oh, sorry about that. I just had to go to the door quickly. But yeah, post-sideboard, we've got a lot of interaction here. We don't really care about the ETB hate cards, but we definitely want Seam Rip, and then I think we definitely want Toxic Deluge as well. And then, to be honest, Doorkeeper Thrall isn't really going to do much at all here. I might as well bring in the Ripples of Undeath, which can hopefully, not only fill the graveyard for the Titans, but also help us find more interaction consistently as well. But yeah, the way we've set up, we've got a lot of interaction, and, decent ways to start applying pressure as well. So I feel like post-sideboard especially, this should be a very good matchup for us, just because of the amount of interaction we've got. So obviously going second is going to be a bit more of a concern, but, with 8 discard spells, 8 pieces of spot removal, 3 sweepers, plus Flage, plus Barrogoyf, I feel like we should be winning this. But I don't think we can keep any hand without any early interaction. That's the most important thing in this matchup. And wow, I don't think we can keep a 1-lander here either. Because, maybe if we had, more removal that wasn't Toxic Deluge, right? Because we need 2 more lands off the top in order to cast those. This hand is pretty awkward because we obviously need a Black Source off the top, but I don't think we can go below a 5. And at least if we draw a Black Source off the top, we have multiple pieces of interaction here. So just going to lead on the Sacred Foundry tapped. Really, really need to find a Black Source this turn, I think. Because if we let them, untap with a 2-drop in play, they could very easily be holding up Shard Mage's Rescue, and then it's just game over. Okay, there is a Dante Vanguard, but we do have Toxic Deluge. So as long as we find a Black Source off the top, I think we should be alright. Oh yeah, I should be setting stops during the opponent's turn as well, just to represent something like a Fragment Reality, right? Don't want the opponent to know that we just don't have anything here. Wow, they passed without even putting Lurrus into hand. We don't find a Black Source though, that's pretty awkward. So I'm just trying to think what the opponent could have here. I mean, they must have a Shard Mage's Rescue. That's the only reason I could think of why they wouldn't put Lurrus into hand if they're not going to put auras on something or run out another creature here. Okay, now they put Lurrus into hand, so they definitely have Shard Mage's Rescue. So if we do... Wow, another miss on the Black Source. I was going to say, if we do find a Black Source off the top, we need to make sure that we go Toxic Deluge X equals 2 to not get blown out by the Shard Mage's Rescue here. And it's kind of awkward they've got Lurrus in hand here now as well, because if we do Toxic Deluge, they can then immediately recast the Adante Vanguard, and most of our... I mean, I guess Seam Rip can take out Adante Vanguard, which is nice, but we obviously don't have Seam Rip at the moment, so... Plus, it's pretty obvious they have Shard Mage's Rescue as well, so... Okay, now they're starting to put auras on the Vanguard, so I think to have any chance of winning the game, we need to draw Black Source this turn, and even then... I mean, it depends what they do main phase 2, but we might just be forced to use Thoughtseize here if we do find a Black Source. Okay, there is a Black Source, and I think... I mean, I'm really hoping I Thoughtseize and they have Lurrus, Shard Mage's Rescue, and 3 lands here, because if they have enough auras to go for lethal next turn, we're in trouble. Like, the reason I can't go for Toxic Deluge here is because we go Deluge, their next turn is just Lurrus, replay Vanguard, and then we don't have any way to remove the Vanguard. Wow, okay, yeah, we're dead here, right? I mean, maybe they don't cast all their auras, but... I feel like when we're at 7, they can easily set up lethal here for the most part, so... And obviously we need life to pay for Deluge as well, so unless we happen to draw Seam Rip off the top... I mean, Seam Rip off the top doesn't even work as long as they keep at least one Shard Mage's Rescue, so... Yeah, missing the black lands off the top really hurt us this game. If we'd found it on curve and we can go Toxic Deluge immediately, we might be alright. Okay, there's Light Pause. Yeah, we're very, very likely dead here. So that was pretty unfortunate. Just had a few awkward mulligans there, but you know, at least we've still got game 3 and we're on the plate here. So as long as we don't get unlucky with the mulligans again, I think we should be good here, hopefully. You know, getting game 1 is a very big deal. But yeah, we're on the play here. And yep, this looks good to me, right? We've got Seam Rip, we've got Toxic Deluge, we've got Barrogoyf as well, which is really big at just ensuring that we put them on a pretty fast clock. But yeah, we'll see what the opponent has here. Oh, Thought Partition, interesting. I mean, I was worried they would go turn 1 plot Demonic Ruckus, because if they have Demonic Ruckus into Light Pause and we're reliant on Seam Rip, they can obviously get sheltered by Ghost on. But having said that, being on the play is a pretty big deal, because then going into our turn 3, we could go Seam Rip and pay for the ward too. But thankfully, well, not thankfully, because Thought Partition is kind of awkward depending on what they hit here. Wow, they go for Croxer. That was not what I was expecting. I mean, I don't really care about Croxer at all, so I'm pretty happy to see that. And we drew Fatal Push off the top, which is very, very big here. I'd love to draw a red source off the top, because then we can also hasten the Barrogoyf for next turn. Presumably we will get a good target for Fatal Push here. Unless they run out of Dento Vanguard, obviously, but we do have the Seam Rip straight away, and they obviously won't have mana available to go for Shard Mage's Rescue to protect it. Plus we've obviously got Toxic Deluge that can take it out as well, so... okay, they just plot the Ruckus. Wow, and another Thought Partition, okay. Be interesting to see what they take here. I wonder if it gives us any insight into what they've got in their hand. I mean, it wouldn't surprise me if they take Fatal Push. Yeah, okay. So, we do draw Inquisition off the top, though. And I think that has to be the play here, right? Because if they've only got 1 creature, that saves us a lot of hassle. And they do, so now we get to take the Esper Sentinel. Now, they do get to put Lurrus into hand here, but we should be able to get Barrogoyf in play. And they're still, you know... Even if they go Lurrus into Esper Sentinel next turn, we can then Toxic Deluge X equals 2. The Barrogoyf should survive, and then they're completely out of creatures, including the Lurrus. Yes, they do put Lurrus into hand. And we do find a land off the top, so we can now hasten the Barrogoyf if we wanted to. I'm just trying to think whether we need the mana for next turn or not. And I don't think we do, if I'm being honest, right? Because... I mean, I guess getting 5 mana for Fatal Push could be relevant, but if they do go Lurrus into Esper Sentinel, Toxic Deluge is the main card that I want. Okay, we don't find any creatures, but, you know, we are starting to apply pressure here, which is quite important. And obviously Barrogoyf is now way out of range of Toxic Deluge, so we can go X equals 2 and still get in for a reasonable amount with the Barrogoyf. So presumably they just go Lurrus plus Esper Sentinel here. I guess they could also use Ruckus on the Esper Sentinel. But again, X equals 2 would still kill there. But it would draw them 2 cards, which is a little bit awkward. But having said that, you know, last time I was saying, you know, Fatal Push could make a difference here, but I assume we're going to be using Toxic Deluge here. And then by the next turn, we'll have the mana back from Arena of Glory. Be a bit awkward if the last card in their hand is a 2-drop, though, because if they can go 2-drop into Sheltered by Ghosts, I guess we have Seam Rip as an answer for that, and we know they don't have Shard Mage's Rescue, so I feel like we should be pretty good here no matter what they do, to be honest. Wow, they crack a land. That is a surprise. I thought they would just... I guess they know about Toxic Deluge, though. That's face up, so... Makes sense. Okay, we drew... Oh, no, that's brutal for the opponent. We drew Inquisition, so now we can take out the Lurrus. Wow, I guess that's the awkward thing about taking out the Hushbringer and Doorkeeper Thrall. The hits off Barrogoyf are way, way lower now, which is one of the issues with the construction of this deck, I think. But I mean, in this matchup, it doesn't really matter, because just having a high density of interaction is the most important thing. Plus, it fills our graveyard for eventually when we do find Crocs or a Flage, so... Okay, there is Esper Sentinel. I mean, presumably they go Sheltered by Ghosts here, but... You know, we have Toxic Deluge, we have Seam Rip that can take it out, and we know that they don't have Shard Mage's Rescue. I guess the awkward thing here is that they could potentially draw Shard Mage's Rescue off the top, because we can't pay for the tax. You know, if we go Seam Rip, we can't pay for the tax and the ward, especially if they do put the Demonic Ruckus on here. But again, the chances of that are pretty low, right? So I don't think we should worry too much about that. And I don't think it's worth the opponent playing Ethereal Armor here. I think the most important thing from the opponent is to just ensure that we can't pay for the ward and the tax, which they've already set up, even if we drew a land off the top. Because we need 6 mana to do that, obviously. And then, presumably, they'd want to save the Ethereal Armor for whatever creature they drew next. So, obviously, don't want to pay for the Sentinel tax. And then we do want to pay for the ward, obviously. So we'll pay for the ward here. Does look like opponents getting priority, though, which does worry me. And they do... Oh, no. They found the one... Oh, that's so annoying. I mean, at least we get rid of the Ethereal Armor, which means that we don't have to pay as much for Toxic Deluge, but... Oh, that's pretty unfortunate. I mean, like I said, we can still go Toxic Deluge. They do get to draw another card, though. So, how much do we pay for Deluge here? Surely we can get away with X equals 4, right? Because otherwise, you know, they would need to have the Shard Mage's Rescue in hand and to draw another one off the top. I'm willing to take that risk, right? They've already used one Shard Mage's Rescue here. Chances of them having, you know, 2 as the next 2 cards are pretty low. I mean, they do look like they have priority here, so they probably do have 1. Please don't have both. That would be so bad. Maybe I'm supposed to go X equals 5, actually, thinking about it. Okay. Got away with it, yeah. Thinking about it, considering we're at 16, I probably should have just gone X equals 5, play around the double, but it just felt so unlikely that it's not worth it. Okay, Plot Ruckus is a good sign. Probably means they don't have any creatures here. So yeah, I think we'll just attack, see what we mill over. I mean, I'd love to find a Flage here. Oh, we found 2. That's pretty big. So now we can escape a Flage and have another one for basically just a Lightning Helix to the face next turn. And I feel like we should be good no matter what here, right? Because even if they find a creature, even if they find Light Paws plus Ruckus, I'd be very surprised if they can deal 23 damage in 1 turn. I guess, actually, no, if they find Light Paws, Ruckus, and another 1-mana Aura, they could put Sheltered by Ghosts on and Hammerhand to give... Oh, no, they've already... Oh, no, Hammerhand was last game. Yeah, they can potentially go Light Paws, Ruckus, Sheltered by Ghosts, and Hammerhand. Okay, there's Spirit Dancer. I mean, that's not as bad because they would need to naturally draw Sheltered by Ghost and Ruckus. So as long as they don't naturally draw both of those, we should just be able to go face with the Flage next turn. But yeah, this game's a lot closer than I thought. Opponent has drawn some, you know, important cards off the top by the looks of it. But we should hopefully still get there, fingers crossed. Oh no, there is Sheltered by Ghosts. We just need to fade Hammerhand here. I think that's the only thing that saves them. Unless they've used it already? No, okay. Hammerhand was last game. I do get confused like that sometimes. Okay. This should be good then. I don't think there's anything Aura's runs that should be able to stop Flage going face here. You know, even Fragment Reality doesn't stop this. Yeah, okay, we got there. Nice. Okay, so we're going second here. And yeah, this looks pretty good. Right, we've got Fatal Push on 1 into either Fable or Flage on 3. Okay, turn 1 Esper Sentinels, so it's weird that, you know, my first thought is maybe Auras, but it's weird they're not on Luris, so I'm going to hold off either way. I'd rather not give them a card here, especially when we don't have a 2-drop to play. Okay, Voice of Victory, so maybe we're against Boros Energy. Not a deck I've seen much since the Ajani ban, but that could be what we're up against here. And we do draw another Fatal Push here. I think what I'm going to do is just Fatal Push the Voice of Victory and just pay the Sentinel tax, because You know, next turn we could go Flage on the Esper Sentinel, and then following turn play Fable and Fatal Push if they have another threat here. Guide of Souls. Okay, yeah, so it looks like it is Boros Energy, which is a deck I've not seen in a while. Double Guide of Souls is pretty scary, and Stadium Headliner, so opponent getting pretty aggressive here. Thankfully, I don't have quite enough energy to buff the Esper Sentinel. So, I mean, we could obviously go for Fatal Push here, but I think what I'm going to do is crack the Vista and probably go for Flage on one of the Guide of Souls. And then we can go Fatal Push plus Fable next turn, and then hopefully start to turn the corner a little bit. I'm also trying to just think how we can set up Escaping Flage, because we've obviously got Arena of Glory here as well. So if we can get to, you know, the turn after we play Fable, with the looting, I reckon we can then escape the Flage the following turn, which should hopefully be good enough to stabilize. So I guess it just depends on how explosive their next turn is, really. Right, if they commit more to the board, then we might have a struggle racing. Oh, yikes. Okay, Goblin Bombardment makes things a lot more difficult, because now, you know, if we do escape Flage, then they can obviously sack the creatures in response to the Flage triggers if we target them, which then means they deny us the life gain. So, obviously we'll see what we draw for the turn here, but yeah, okay, just a Fable. So I think what I've got to do here is just push the Sentinel and not pay the tax, and then go for Fable the same turn. We could obviously pay the 3 tax here, which is maybe defensible, considering giving them a card isn't ideal, but I just think getting Fable down makes Flage so much better, right? We can loot away 2 cards, and then I guess potentially we could use Flage to go face and just gain 6 life back, which could be the way to go. But yeah, with Flage in the yard, it definitely feels better than giving them a card to get Fable in play. Oh, wow, Thunderbond Vanguard. Okay, so it looks like they're on more of a mobilized build around than, you know, the conventional Boros energy list that we've seen in the past. Oh, wow, and Static Prison. That might be lethal then, right? Because they'll be attacking him with a 4/4 Vanguard, plus they can buff one of their creatures with the Guide of Souls as well. Yikes. Okay, yeah, we are dead here then. That's pretty unfortunate. So giving them a card off the Sentinel did actually make a difference here, but had they not had exactly those 2 cards, I think we survived for an extra turn cycle. So that was pretty unfortunate. Post-sideboard, though, I do think we get quite a bit better. Toxic Deluge in particular is going to be really nice here. I think we definitely also want the Seam Rips, because that can answer Bombardment as well as, you know, all of their other threats. And then I think we just want the Deluges over the Inquisitions. And then I think I'm just going to ship it back, right? We didn't see any 4+ drops, so I think Inquisition is probably going to be better than Thoughtseize in this matchup, because the life loss does make a difference when they're running Goblin Bombardment and a bunch of aggressive creatures. But Hushbringer and... what am I saying? Hushbringer and Doorkeeper Thrall should be pretty good in this matchup. So this hand looks pretty good. I think I'm going to lead with Arena of Glory on 1, although maybe we're supposed to hold up Fatal Push here. So maybe I'm supposed to lead on the Swamp, maybe? Or the Silent Clearing. Although, again, I don't really want to deal myself unnecessary damage. So I think I'm going to lead on the Swamp to have Fatal Push open if they go for Guide of Souls, or I guess we'd probably give them a card if they run out of Sentinel on turn 1. But yeah, I think having Fatal Push up here is more important than getting Arena of Glory in play. And then next time we can go Hushbringer, which I think is definitely going to be the line, because they do have a lot of ETBs by the looks of things. So here, I mean, I did say I would probably push Sentinel, but I'm not actually sure I will. I think I'm just going to run out the Hushbringer here, and then, you know, I don't think we're in a situation where we need to rush with the Fatal Push, especially because we're on the play. And then next turn, if we do have to play Arena of Glory tapped, we can go Fatal Push plus play the tax if we need. Okay, rest in peace. Obviously, that's pretty good against us. I think I'm just going to go Seam Rip on the Rest in Peace here, now that we've drawn Barrogoyf. If we hadn't drawn the Barrogoyf, then I think I'm probably just going to Fatal Push the Esper Sentinel first. But with Barrogoyf just drawn, I think I'm more interested in getting rid of the Rest in Peace as a priority. And then, obviously, Barrogoyf is going to be... Well, as long as they don't have Bombardment, should be good at stabilizing the board. Okay, Double Stadium Headline, okay. Oh, wow, okay. That's a sick top deck. I was going to say, you know, there's maybe an argument between going Fable versus Barrogoyf here, But now we've drawn Toxic Deluge. I mean, we do give them a card, but getting rid of 2 Stadium Headliners and an Esper Sentinel in 1 is absolutely huge, right? Toxic Deluge should be great in this matchup. There's Static Prison. It'd be interesting to see what they get. Okay, they do get rid of the Hushbringer, but we've got a backup one here, so not too bothered about that. Okay, 2 Guide of Souls. Thankfully, they don't have enough energy to buff anything yet. Wow, another Deluge. I mean, I was just going to run out Hushbringer and have Fatal Push up, but I think getting rid of 2 Guide of Souls should really slow them down. I am a little bit concerned about my life total, though. We are down to 13 already, but we do have Barrogoyf as a way to gain that back. Hushbringer obviously having lifelink is pretty big as well. Goblin Bombardment. I think I'm just going to run out the Barrogoyf here, right? Because even if the opponent draws a creature, we can Fatal Push it pre-combat and then just get in. Yeah, okay, opponent just scoops up. So we did get pretty lucky with some of the Toxic Deluge draws, but we did have good backup plays anyway. And then I think I'm just going to run it back, right? Deluge was great there. Seam Rip, especially now that we know they're bringing in Rest in Peace, also seems very relevant as well. So, yeah, definitely feel like this matchup should become quite a bit better post-sideboard. Interesting to note the opponent's changing their configuration going into Game 3, though. Probably to account for the Hushbringers, because they didn't see any of that stuff Game 1, I don't think. But yeah, overall, this should be a good matchup, right? We have a lot of interaction. We have 8 ETB hate cards, which shuts off a lot of their synergies as well. We have answers for Rest in Peace. We have answers for Bombardment. This hand is a little clunky. Right, Croxer isn't great against them, just running it out. Okay, this hand's a lot better. And I think for me, it's between Doorkeeper Thrall and Hushbringer. You could maybe make an argument to putting a land back because we're on the draw, but I think it's kind of greedy to do that, right, when we have our 3rd land guaranteed, especially when one of them is a silent clearing. I think it makes sense to keep all 3, especially because we have Toxic Deluge and Fable. And I'm going to put back Hushbringer here because I think catching them off guard with a Doorkeeper Thrall is more likely to be relevant, right? They're much more likely to run out an ECB creature the turn we have Doorkeeper Thrall up rather than using a piece of interaction, for example, you know, especially because we saw they were on Static Prison. And so, okay, so quite an aggressive start. Very happy that we've got Toxic Deluge in hand here. But yeah, especially because we've seen they've got Static Prison, I think it's better to have a flash threat than just running out Hushbringer here, for example. So if they just attack, I'm definitely going to flash in the Doorkeeper Thrall to try and ambush the Esper Sentinel. Looks like they run out of creature pre-combat, so I'm going to go for Doorkeeper Thrall here. There's a chance they go for Stadium Headliner here, but I think that actually works into our favour because then they lose a creature, slows them down a little bit, and then we don't have anything to lose with Deluge. Oh, wow. Fragment Reality. I mean, that's even better for us because now we get to cleanly wipe out everything, basically. Presumably they will buff the Sentinel here, which does mean they get a card off the Toxic Deluge, but you know, it's definitely worth it here, right? So I think I'm going to shock in this Sacred Foundry. Again, we want to be careful of our life total here, but especially when we don't have, you know, 4 mana's worth of stuff, I'd rather pay the 2 for the shock land than take 1 repeatedly off the silent clearing. Okay, there is Rest in Peace. Not really bothered about that at the moment. Hopefully they don't have a good follow-up card as well. Okay, and Goblin Bombardment. So nothing too crazy, but they do have a lot of good draws now. And then I think I'm just going to play the Sacred Foundry tapped. And then we can just loot away 2 of these lands going into next turn. I mean, it's really nice that we don't have to worry about Ajani, right? That massively reduces the how crazy the top end of their deck is. Wow, we're really flooding out here. I think I'm just going to get rid of the 2 Vistas. Hopefully we draw something good here. We are flooding out a bit. I'm going to attack him with the Shaman, though, because obviously, you know, we can just run out the second Fable as a blocker. If they want to use a piece of removal to get rid of the Fable token, I'm not too bothered. But I'm going to draw first, obviously, because we still have the 3 mana to cast Fable, and we could draw something better here. Wow, another land. I mean, it's good that we have the second Fable to loot away some of these tap lands here. But yeah, really hope the opponent doesn't have a good turn this turn. Oh, wow, okay. There is Ocelot Pride. That is definitely a concern. Right, we're essentially down to 3 already now. So really got to hope we find something good off this loot. Okay, Hushbringer's a start. That's both a source of life gain and a way to shut off the potential flying off Guide of Souls. Oh, and we find Barrogoyf as well. Although, actually, yeah, obviously under Rest in Peace, that's not really going to be doing much. So, what do we want to do here? I mean, I think it's risky to attack, honestly. Right, they're at 22. We're not exactly going to be winning the race. So I think... I mean, I feel like we do have enough blockers, but I just don't really feel... And we probably have more than enough mana here that it's probably not worth attacking in, if I'm being honest. So I think what I'm going to do here is just run out the Hushbringer, hold up Doorkeeper Thrall and the Silent Clearing here. And that will then hopefully shut them off any crazy plays. I just got to hope they don't have too many more creatures here. Right, because all they need is 3 more creatures and they can go face with Bombardment. But like I said, it is very nice that we have Hushbringer here that can start gaining us a bit of life back. Okay, second Rest in Peace, so unlikely this Barragoyf is going to be live. I'm kind of surprised they didn't crack the Sunbaked Canyon first, though. Because obviously if they found another good creature here, they'd much prefer to play that than the second Rest in Peace, probably. But yeah, either way, we get Doorkeeper Thrall down here. Oh, okay, Steam Rip's a really nice pickup. I was going to say we can potentially copy the Hushbringer, but we do have to worry about them using Bombardment to kill the Hushbringer prior to it, but now we can take the Bombardment out, which is the main card we're worried about. Yeah, okay, an opponent just keeps it up, so we got there, nice. Okay, so we're on the play here. And yeah, this looks pretty good to me. Right, we got Fatal Push on 1, Hushbringer on 2, Fable on 3 can hopefully loot away some lands. Seems a pretty decent start to me. Obviously, especially if the opponent's on the deck that gets hurt by ETB hate. And then obviously we've got Arena of Glory here as well, which makes, you know, Flage, Croxer and Barragoyf all really good top decks. So yeah, we'll see what the opponent's on here. Okay, we're against Affinity by the looks of things, so Hushbringer should be really solid here. And we find a Croxer off the top. That's pretty nice. So then, you know, we've got the option of either going for Fable or potentially even Hasted Croxer here if we really want. Okay, second Drix Interlacer. Let's see what else they've got. Okay, and Emery, so obviously Hushbringer shuts off the ETB from Emery, but they can obviously still loop with the Drix Insulators they've already got in play. Okay, and they ship it back here. So honestly, I think, you know, they're pretty well set up to play a long game here, so I think it just makes sense to go for the Hasted Croxer here, right? Just apply as much pressure as we can, as early as we can. You know, both in terms of, you know, it's going to disrupt their hand, but it's also going to pressure their life total quite a lot. Okay, Arcbound Ravager, so they're probably on weapons manufacturing, if I had to guess. But again, that's quite, you know, it takes a while to set up, so... Okay, another artifact land. And an Ornithopter. I mean, thankfully, the Hushbringer shuts the Drix Insulators off from getting counters off creatures. And it also shuts off the death trigger of Arcbound Ravager as well, so we don't really need to be too concerned about that, I don't think. So, we could obviously Fatal Push the Ravager. I'm just trying to think how many counters they could put on the Ravager potentially. I mean, I think it just makes sense for me to attack first with the Croxer and then see what they do, because if they do sack a bunch of artifacts, we can obviously just Fatal Push it in response, right? Wow, they just let the damage through and we get rid of a Thought Monitor. I mean, I'm happy about that. So here, I mean, Fatal Push, holding it up is pretty useful, but I think just to be more mana efficient, I'm just going to go for the Fable. Plus, this gives us a good way to loot away the Inquisition, which obviously isn't very useful here. I mean, if they start cracking the Interlacers, maybe it will be, but I feel like it just makes more sense to get Fable in play, because I'm not really, you know, with a Croxer in play, I'm not really too worried about them attacking here. Right, we're definitely on the front foot in terms of racing. Okay, there's Thought Monitor, but it's not going to draw them any cards or put anything on the Drix Insulators because of the Hushbringer here. Okay, and they crack the Interlacer. I'm kind of surprised they didn't use the Emery to replay Interlacer. Okay, there's Kappa Cannoneer. Right, so... I mean, I'm not massively high on Inquisition. If it was with Thoughtseize, I'd probably be more interested because, you know, if they have like another Kappa Cannoneer or a Krang or something, then it would be more useful. Okay. So, I mean, I'm definitely going to be attacking with the Croxer here. I'm just trying to debate whether I want to attack him with the Fable token as well. Not willing to throw away the Hushbringer here. Wow, their last card was a Kappa Cannoneer. Okay, very glad to get rid of that. Because obviously we can shut off the Kappa Cannoneer growing via creatures, but we can't really do much if they have non-creature artifacts. And then I think I'm going to use the Fatal Push on Emery. Again, I'm not too worried about Arcbound Ravager if I'm being honest, because, you know, Hushbringer shuts off the death trigger, and they'd have to sacrifice basically their entire board to get Ravagers to the same size as Croxer here. And I'm just debating whether I want to hold this Sacred Foundry to loot away. I think I probably do. We've already got, you know, a decent enough mana, especially with the 2/2 in play that can produce treasures. Wow, cracking an Interlacer on 3 is a good sign. It means they're probably desperate to find something. Okay, there's Pinnacle Emissary. And another Mox Amber. So I think we should be fine here then, right? Obviously, Kappa Cannoneer has unblockable, but... And usually I'd be worried about Ravager here, but... I'm not really because of Hushbringer. Okay, so Pinnacle Emissary goes away. We're still pretty far ahead on board. We draw another land, so definitely going to be looting away the 2 lands here. And then we'll see what we draw. Another Hushbringer, okay. Which we can haste in, potentially, if we need to apply a little bit more pressure. Because I'm definitely going to be attacking with the Croxer. That'll put them down to 4. We don't have to worry about the Hushbringer dying, and it'll be useful to get a second one in play just in case they draw, you know, a Galvanic Blast or an Aether Spellbomb or something like that. So I'm just trying to think about whether I want to attack or not. I think I probably do. Sorry, whether I want to haste in the Hushbringer here, I mean. So we'll haste in the Hushbringer. And then even if we draw, you know, a Flage or a Crox... Oh, well, I guess Crox doesn't really apply. But if we draw a Flage off the top, we still have the other Arena of Glory available. If we loot into that next turn, potentially. And then I think I just want to attack him with everything. Right, gains us 2 life back. Gets in for a lot of damage. I mean, we likely do lose the 2/2, but, you know, that doesn't really matter at this point. So, presumably, I mean, I'm kind of surprised they're not also chumping and sacking the other 1/1. And I guess they can sack the Mox Amber. That's not really live without a legendary creature anyway. Yeah, okay. So, we lose the 2/2 to Ravager, but we put them down to 2. Means if they draw a land or they empty their hand, they're just dead to a single Croxer attack here. Okay, there's Pinnacle Emissary. Wow, they run out the Mox Amber. I mean, I'm surprised about that. Okay, they sack to the Ravager. Oh, maybe they don't realise that Hushbringer will shut off the Ravager death trigger here. Because if we didn't have Hushbringer, if we had Doorkeeper Thrall here, they could potentially sack their whole board and then put the tokens on the Kappa Cannoneer, which has unblockable. But Hushbringer obviously shuts that off. Okay, so we'll block the Ravager here. Yeah, okay, they didn't realise about the Hushbringer. So yeah, the death trigger not that relevant against a lot of the metagame, but I think Ravager and, you know, Young Wolf from Yawgmoth are the main 2 really that come up. So, post sideboard against Affinity. I mean, I'm not sure the discard spells are that important here, especially Inquisition when a lot of their top end is expensive. I definitely think Seam Rip's nice because it can obviously answer Drix Interlacer and stuff like that. Toxic Deluge could also be good here, right? It looks like they're running more of the go wide build. So I'm just trying to think. I think we do want Seam Rip. And I think maybe we don't want Thoughtseize. I mean, it's tricky to say. Just having a look at what they've got. So, I do think we want Deluge because they're on Pinnacle Emissary. And then, I think... Oh, it's tricky to say because Fatal Push is important to be able to kill Emery. But Seam Rip kills basically everything else. I mean, I'm not 100% sure that's right, but I'm gonna run it back like that, right? Fatal Push doesn't really kill that much early on, right? It kills Tamio, but so does Seam Rip. Kills Emery where Seam Rip doesn't, but that's basically it, I think. And with, obviously, you know, Emery's best with Drix Interlacer, so Seam Rip answering, that limits how much Emery can do as well. Especially if we can get our ETBs down before their Emery, and they don't get the mill, that also limits its, you know, how powerful it can be as well, so... Yeah, I do feel pretty confident about this matchup. This is one of the matchups where the ETB hate is really, really nice. So this one looks pretty good, right? We've got double Thoughtseize, we've got Seam Rip if they lead on something like a Tamio that we want to be able to take out, and we do have the Hushbringer, plus Barragoyf as a generically powerful threat as well. So I think I'm going to lead on Thoughtseize. There's maybe an argument for going to Seam Rip to get rid of the Drix Interlacer, but it takes a while to get online. Okay, they do have weapons manufacturing, and they do have Pinnacle Emissary as well. I think I'm just going to take the Emery here, though, right? Because it limits what they can do next turn. Obviously, they can play weapons manufacturing into Moxamba, potentially. But, you know, then they're kind of out of gas straight away. So here, I mean, there's maybe an argument to using Seam Rip on the Drix Interlacer, but I really want to get a Mountain in play for Arena of Glory and to be able to cast Fable and all the other red cards in the deck. And Hushbringer will prevent all of the creature triggers off Pinnacle Emissary going onto the Drix Interlacer. And the weapons manufacturing as well, which is a really big deal. They will get the triggers off Moxamba, but, you know, this is just putting 3 1/1 tokens in play, essentially. And we can still go for Seam Rip on the Drix Interlacer next turn if we want. Because presumably, yeah, they're not going to crack it here, really, I don't think. Okay, we draw another land here. So, I think I'm going to go Thoughtseize plus Seam Rip here, get rid of the Drix Interlacer. Okay, Metallic Rebuke, good to get rid of that. That will hopefully clear the way for either Fable or Barragoyf. And then we can get rid of the Drix Interlacer. We can hold the Hushbringer back to just, you know, prevent these 1/1s from getting in. They don't have enough mana to cast the Pinnacle Emissaries, and if they do draw land, that's kind of a whiff on the top as well. Obviously, it is a bit concerning they already have a lot of artifacts in play, meaning if they draw, you know, a Thoughtcast off the top, then we get there. Yeah, opponent just scoops it up. Hushbringer and the ETB hate really, really strong in this matchup. Okay, so we're going second tier, and can't keep a one-lander with this deck, unfortunately. Wow, 2 one-landers in a row is pretty rough. This I do think we are going to keep, though, and... I mean, on the draw, I think we can afford to put a land back, and then I'm going to put Thoughtseize back as well. Right, Hushbringer obviously can be very good in certain matchups, and also very good with Flage. Wow, turn 1 Hopeless Knight when we were down to 5 is pretty awkward. I think I'm going to discard the Flage, and then... I think I'm going to run out Prismatic Vista on 1 here, right? Because we want to get a basic mountain, and then we can go Hushbringer on 2, Barragoyf on 3, potentially. Wow, Momentum Breaker. Okay, so we're probably getting some sort of Estrid's Invocation deck here. In which case, I don't think Hushbringer is going to be particularly good. But the awkward thing now is we're pretty... Oh, I forgot about Start Your Engines. I mean, that shouldn't really matter, but I should have cracked the Vista in response to the Momentum Breaker. So here, just in case they've got another discard effect, I'm going to go for Silent Clearing, and then if they do have another Hopeless Nightmare or Momentum Breaker or Invocation, we can discard Sacred Foundry. Yeah, there is the Invocation. So that's pretty rough, because now that makes Barragoyf pretty awkward. I mean, we can haste it in, which is pretty nice, because then, you know, if we find another Barragoyf, or, you know, we just get a hit off it, that will enable us to play through it a little bit better, but... Momentum Breaker on Invocation is going to be pretty awkward. Plus, this looks like a matchup where the ETB hate cards are going to do virtually nothing as well. Wow, and we whiff. So presumably they blink it and copy Momentum Breaker, but we've already got 6 cards in the yard, so we can potentially, you know, get in for 12 damage if we escape Flage next turn. And I think we'll put Gigantha into hand here, right? Okay, interesting. They're running Lessons as well, so maybe they're on Chakra Meditation as well. Interesting. I mean, I think I'm just going to discard the Gigantha here because, you know, I want to have access to lands to be able to cast anything we draw off the top. There's a chance you might want to draw the Silent Clearing. Oh, okay. I guess it doesn't matter because they can just go hype this Nightmare again anyway. And then, you know, I'm just going to haste in the Flage. I think my only way to win this game is to just hope to keep bringing back Flage with haste and just, you know, deal damage that way. But if they have anything in their hand to stop this, I think we just lose on the spot, basically. Oh, wow. They're running Counterspell as well. I mean, that seems kind of greedy with a lot of sorcery speed stuff, but, you know, it is what it is. And then hasting in the Flage means that we likely can't escape Flage this turn. Okay, we do draw Doorkeeper Thrall off the top, but this is kind of the nightmare matchup for us where they don't seem to care about the ETB hate, and they're a really grindy engine deck as well. Now, I guess this would be the sort of matchup where Strict Proctor would be better than one of the other hate cards that we're running, but my issue with Strict Proctor is against the other decks where they're running ETB Creature Hate. They can just pay 2 once it gets to the mid to late game, and if it's a very powerful ETB, that can make a real difference. I mean, we can have another shot at escaping the Flage here, but if they have any way to stop this, we're in trouble. We're basically just dead next turn anyway. Wow, second Counterspell. I mean, that lined up very well for the opponent there. But again, this is a tricky matchup where the ETB hate isn't really good. But if we cut the ETB hate, then Barragoyf is going to whiff massively as well. Fatal Push also doesn't really do much here either. Seam Rip doesn't hit Estrid's Invocation. But Ripples of Undeath doesn't seem terrible here. Right, if they don't have any way to remove it, if we resolve that, we can just set up the Titans over and over again, I think. And then I'll bring in 1 Seam Rip here. I mean, again, like I said, the ETB hate cards I can't really cut because it makes Barragoyf bad, and it does enable our faster starts as well. So even though it doesn't do anything, I think because we don't have anything in the sideboard specifically for matchups like this, I think we're kind of forced to keep the Hushbringers and Doorkeeper Thralls in to, you know, speed up our game plan with Croxer and Flage. Okay, there is Storm Chaser's talent. I mean, I think I'm just going to run out the Ripples here, right? We know they're running counter spells, so while their shield's down, I think it makes sense to go for Ripples. I'm just trying to think if there's any chance they're running Force of Negation. I mean, either way, I think it just makes sense to go for it while their shields are down here. Because now we can start getting card advantage every single turn. We can start filling our graveyard for Croxer and Flage. We can find them more consistently as well. Okay, opponent just ships it back. We'll see what we mill over here. So, I mean, I think I'm going to get Fable. I was tempted to get Doorkeeper Thrall so we have a backup, but, you know, we can run out Hushbringer here, run out Fable next turn, hopefully use the Fable to get Croxer into the yard to then escape it. Okay, there's Counterspell. See what they got on 3. Okay, there is Momentum Breaker. I mean, that gets Croxer straight into our yard to maybe escape next turn. Just gotta hope they don't have Invocation straight away. Okay, Boomerang Basics. Gets him for 3. So I think there's a decent chance that we just mill 3 and don't pay 1 here so that we can escape Croxer. And it's a bit unfortunate that we happen to draw the other basic mountain here. And I think we want to keep one of the Fables in the yard as an extra card type for Barragoyf. Because the opponent is obviously playing their own enchantments. Oh, I was going to say, but they don't typically go to the graveyard. I mean, now they have, but yikes. There is the Invocation. If they didn't have that exactly this turn, I think we're in a much better spot. But, you know, if we mill over Flage here, we're in a pretty decent spot as well. Right, sets up for that potentially. So I'm actually going to decline here. I don't think any of those are high enough impact, and our life total is definitely a concern with this token, and obviously we saw from game 1 they've got loads of Hopeless Nightmares as well. And then I think I'm going to play the Blood Crypt tapped, loot away these 2 Vistas, and then if we need to crack the Silent Clearing, we can do it next turn. I'd love to find Arena of Glory, then that makes repeatedly escaping Croxer and Flage, you know, a lot better. Okay, another Momentum Breaker, not too bothered about that really. Just fills the graveyard more for Croxer. Okay, and another Storm Chaser's talent. So again, that increases the opponent's clock. We're already down to 8 here. I would love to have milled a Flage there. Again, our life total is too low to start paying 3 here, I think. Okay, there is Barrogoyf. So, we've got options whether we want to go for Barrogoyf or Croxer here. I mean, we definitely want to have Hushbringer in play as well, so that when they blink the Estrid's Invocation for Momentum Breaker, we can sacrifice the Hushbringer, hopefully keep the Barrogoyf in play to block against the tokens. But, you know, if they have any removal spells here, we're in real trouble, right? If they have Fatal Push for the Hushbringer, then Barrogoyf just dies to the Momentum Breaker, which is pretty rough. Okay, doesn't look like the opponent has anything, or has priority for anything, so... Okay, there's a Momentum Breaker. We sacrifice the Hushbringer. And then as long as they don't have another Momentum Breaker here... Oh, spoke too soon. That's pretty rough. So yeah, as you can see, matchups where the ETB hate cards aren't as good. I mean, to be fair, this seems like a pretty specific matchup where both the ETB hate cards aren't good, we don't have really good interaction for what they're doing, and they're able to grind into the long game as well. Obviously, if I tweak my sideboard to account for this matchup with, you know, maybe Divine Purge or something, it would be a lot better. Come on, we got one more chance if we mill a Flage here. Just Croxer. I mean, we can escape that, obviously, but, you know, we're already going to be losing the Reflection to the Momentum Breaker, and if they have anything else, they can just take out the Croxer and attack for lethal here. And to be honest, even if they all they need is one instant or sorcery here, and they've just discarded one, so, you know, Momentum Breaker is going to enter, we sack the Reflection, and then as long as they can buff their prowess creatures, we just lose anyway, so... Okay, yeah, there's nowhere to run. So unfortunately we lose this one, but, you know, this did seem like kind of a nightmare matchup for how we've configured the deck. But GG's to the opponent either way.